Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited about today's guest. Her name is Ingrid Honkala. Am I saying that right, Ingrid?
Honkala.
Kola?
Honkala.
Honkala, sorry. Emphasis on the first syllable. She is the author of A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom. I saw Ingrid interviewed, I read her book, and I just fell in love with her. I think she has so much wisdom to share. She had a near-death experience at just 2 years old, and she has been being guided by light beings her entire life. And then she had another near-death experience just last year. So Ingrid, if you don't mind, if maybe we could start with, please share with us your two different near-death experiences.
Yes, I will be honored. And yeah, these experiences have been very difficult, pretty traumatic. In reality, it's been 3 near-death experiences that I had in my life, and what show us sometimes how difficult the journey can be, because all these from very, like I mentioned, traumatic experiences, but at the end it just opened this profound path that, just like you mentioned, it started for me when I was 2. And this first near death happened in a situation in which I drowned, because my parents left for work. They will leave us at the care of a maid. This lady didn't pay attention to us when my parents were not around. My oldest sister and I went to play in the patio. She was close to 4, I was close to 3, 2 little toddlers. And then we decided, let's play cash across a tank. This was a huge tank that held about 900 gallons of water. And then playing cash, I lost my balance and fell in the tank. I had never been in a pool. I had never been in a bathtub. I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown. And the first feeling falling in the tank was the feeling of being frigid cold, because I was born in Colombia, in the Andes, in Bogota, and high up there in the Andes, in very early in the morning, the temperature is pretty low, and maybe the water was about 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So when I sensed the temperature in this water, it was like, first the impact of this cold water, and then the sense, what is going on, why I cannot breathe. I went into the state of complete horror. Imagine that panic. How can I get out of this tank? Why I cannot breathe? And when I am experiencing this horror, Mary, in just a blink, it was like going from that to peace and serenity and calmness. And I didn't know what happened, but I didn't need to breathe. I didn't need to escape out of the tank. I didn't need to do anything, just be. And then when I am in this absolutely state of tranquility, I experience what I call contrast. People ask me, how can you remember you were so young? And first, I have to mention, of course, the trauma of drowning. Second, this tank was a very dark space. There was a roof early in the morning, very deep tank. So the last thing I saw, Mary, with my eyes open, was the darkness of the space. And in the moment I entered into that, I saw light. And it was a light that came from below. And it was like the light of a candle, but it was enough to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. And so imagine it was like, now there is light. The other contrast was that right before I drowned, I could hear my heart. And it was pumping in my chest like a very loud drum, with that fear, like boom, 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 boom. And when I enter into that serenity, I say that I experience what I call the silence behind the silence. So it's that deep state where you're in silence, but this silence has an enormous peace. And I love that silence so much, Mary, that I wanted that even after my near death. It was that sense, I want this silence, and I will hide in closets, chapels, under the bed. I was looking for that silence. And then it came the other contrast. And what happened is that after I saw the light, I started to see bubbles. And the bubbles were surrounded by light. And it was like, with this childlike energy, like, this is so cool. I started to chase the bubbles. And when I'm chasing the bubbles, I turn around, and it's when I see a body in the water. And it's the realization, whoa, that is my body. And I saw the body with the eyes open. And then it was the thing that, whoa. But it was like the sense of familiarity, like, oh, this is normal. Yeah, that's my body, is okay. And it comes that other contrast I was about to mention before, and is the fact that I was born as a very sick child. And sometimes we will wonder, like, why this child was born so sick? Like, it's not fair. In my case, that had a purpose. Because if I would have born as a very healthy child, I would not have known the difference. So for almost 3 years, I had been sick. I didn't even know what well-being was. And when I enter in the state of absolute well-being, Mary, I'm like, wow. I look at that body and I'm like, I'm not going back there. No way. And I turned around and I left the body behind. And the moment I turned, I started to see flowers, and they were blooming from nowhere. And this was this majestic scenery, and I was picked up. And I'm being carried by the flowers. And I said to people, it's like going back to the womb. When you're not doing anything, you're just being done, being carried. And I am like, oh, this just like absolute bliss. And it's when I am in this state that in just a blink like that, I appear in the maid's room. And I look at the maid from above and I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And Maria was completely unaware that I was there. And then from there, in another blink, I appear in my mom's path. And my mom didn't have a car. She was walking. She was close to her bus stop. And when I saw her from above, I think this is the part that, one, validates the story, and two, I think blows everybody's minds, because the moment I say, oh, that's Mom, Mary, she stopped. She did not give another step. And I like to mention that she just had gotten a new job. You know how the mind is like, oh, I have to go to my new job. I mean, come on. No, she did not listen to that. She stopped, and she knew something was happening at home with one of her babies, and she turned around and started to run. And when I saw her, I'm like, oh, I wonder why she's running. And then at that moment, I looked at the horizon and I saw a dog. And because I love animals, in just the sense of wanting to be with the dog, I was with the dog. I was like, whoa. And then I changed my view and I saw a park. And when I felt the desire to be in the park, I am in the park. And he's like, whoa, this is so cool. And now I'm playing a game of going places. And when I'm playing this game, in another blink like that, I appear in a realm. And it was a realm made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. Oh, Mary, it was the first time in my almost 3 years that I felt, oh, I am home. I am finally home. And then I didn't see anybody at that moment, but I felt welcome, embraced, just like when you were in your home, warm. It's like, ah. And at that moment, although I had seen my body in the water, I didn't have the realization that that was not me. And it's when I realized, oh, that's not who I am. That body, that persona, that's not who I am. And it's when I realized myself as a being of light. And I started to have that sense of like just becoming part of the whole. And this, I was still having a sense of self at that moment, but this went even farther. It was, I experienced what I call nothingness. And when I say nothing, people get afraid, like, what? Some people call it non-self, some people call it emptiness. What it was, when I say this, is I have to give an analogy. And imagine that there's a big stadium. And in the middle of this huge stadium, there's a little tiny box. And all I knew about myself was that box. And the box is now open. And I realized, oh, I'm not this little box. I'm not just this, I'm all of this. So it's nothing, because it's nothing you thought you were, it's nothing you knew. But it's wholeness at the same time, because it's that realization, oh, I'm none of that, but I'm all of this. So it's a state of like interconnectedness too. It's just, you become whole. It's that sense like I am wholeness. And then I cannot say you become anything. You always have been, you just didn't know. And the only thing I can, it's really, really, really difficult to describe this state of being, Mary, but all I could say is a state of pure presence and just absolute consciousness. It's like indescribable state of being. And then I am in this state of being when my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other incredible thing. She knew exactly where to go. She directed herself to the back of the house. My oldest sister was still there because she was trying to get me out of the tank. But like I said, she was very little. This tank was very big. And then my mom looked at her and she's like, Mom, Ingrid is in the tank and I cannot get her. My mom jumped in the tank, got me out. She said, like, I was like a raggedy doll, no pulse, no breathing. The lips, the fingers all blue, completely pale. My mom started to do all she knew to revive me because she was a teacher she worked with children and she had learned CPR for children. So she was just trying to revive me there. I was completely disconnected. And then I didn't feel anything she was doing, Mary, but it was suddenly like everything in this experience, like in a flash, that I felt that I have been pushed from the tallest building in the world. And there was nothing I could do to stop this fall. It was like, no. And I felt like I was being vacuumed, not just falling, but vacuum back. And then it was this sense of resistance. I don't want to come back. And I knew that I was back when the sense of coldness, the sense that I was not in that state of well-being, that sense of freedom, expansion, it's like going back in the little box. And now just be like, no, I don't like this. I don't want it. I don't want to be here.
Ingrid, before you
hard.
continue, can I just ask one question?
Yes.
We had a couple of weeks ago, we had Nicole Clark. She wrote a beautiful book. Her 2-year-old daughter drowned. She actually did drown and passed the other side and stayed there. But then she started communicating with her. And so Nicole wrote this whole book about communications with her daughter after she died. And this is not a 2-year-old. This is an incredibly brilliant, wise soul. And as you're talking, I'm wondering, so most of us know, especially those of us who have had children, the intellect of a 2-year-old. So I'm wondering, was that your experience as you remember on the other side? Did you feel, because it sounds like you felt wiser and bigger than an actual 2-year-old. Is that true?
Is absolutely truth, Mary, to the point that coming back was a very, very difficult experience. And I'm going to actually prove what she wrote in that book, because when I came back, although I am just a 2-year-old, I'm back. And when I am seeing my parents, is that sense of like, these are not just my parents. I felt them as my equal because I had experienced that sense of oneness. And I became extremely rebellious because I felt, why do I have to listen to these people? And when I came back, I looked at myself, Mary, and I said, I am not this child. I'm not this child. So I could never feel that I was a child again. And I had this awareness, but like you say, I did not have the language. I did not have the intellect or the words or the nothing around or the people around me to be able to understand or work out with a child that was holding a mind like that. To the point that only no long after, I don't know how long, but no long after my NDE, now imagine, like we said, I'm just about to be 3 and now I can read and write. I can resolve mathematical problems. I can put together complex puzzles. I can paint. So definitely, yes, I already knew I'm not this little box in the middle of a stadium, but how can I explain this? How can I bring my point across? If I would say anything, people looked at me like, what? And I could not relate with other children, Mary, because I would look at them and think, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. It was extremely difficult. So because I could not really make sense of what was happening, then I stopped eating. I stopped interacting. I was angry. I didn't even want to be touched. What actually saved this child was the fact that, like you mentioned at the beginning, the beings of light, I started to communicate with beings of light. Without this communication, Mary, I don't think I could have really thrived or I could have really developed well, because I felt I did not belong. I didn't understand. And I would cry and I said, God, why did you do this to me? Why did you send me here? Where is the manual? How can I work this out? So what also happened is that after my NDE, I started to have out-of-body experiences. And I continue going to the realm of the light. And that was pretty also hard at the beginning, Mary, because in these journeys, I would see changes in movement and colors and sounds and things that I have never experienced in my human experience. How can you explain anything? Then, and I also, of course, I come to realize, and you know this through time, how limited is the language. Imagine for a 2-year-old. If it's still limited today, imagine not just the age, but at the time, nobody really knew about any of these experiences. There was nothing really much written. The little information was not available to everybody, and it was difficult. So when I started to have these out-of-body experiences, in one of these journeys, one day I was completely surrounded by, like, people probably call similar to orbs. I call them starlight figures, and they were shining in all different colors. And it was like standing like at night in the middle of just a full a sky completely filled with stars, but imagine everything was light and there was shining lights of all colors. And in one of these journeys, now of course I wanted to sleep all the time. They fired that lady that wasn't paying attention. They hired a new one, but because I slept, she didn't have to pay attention. Oh, it's okay, she's sleeping. And then I spent many hours in these journeys. And in one of these journeys, one of these starlight figures that was shining in gold shaped itself into a human form. And it touched me and it showed me, look, we are the same. I said, oh, you are a being of light. And
So wait, I'm sorry. So the being of light took on like a lighted human shape? Is that what you're saying?
yes,
So
yes,
beautiful. Okay, I'm sorry.
yes.
Let's
It
go
was
ahead.
beautiful. And when it touched me is when I say, is that realization, we are the same.
Mhm.
And I call them beings of light because just because it was a being of light.
Mhm.
Then I woke up and I started to feel the sense of like, oh, it's okay. Everything is okay. And then, but of course, I was still sleeping a lot and I could not be the child that slept forever. So balance was needed, of course. So not long after that, now I'm going to be I'm 4 years old and I'm taking a shower. And Mary, this huge blue intense light appeared in the bathroom. And now it was like, now the beings of light are here. And I started to see them here. And when I started to see them here, although they didn't do or say anything, now I could see them everywhere. It was that sense of, oh, now home is here. And then I started to feel that it was okay to be with my sisters, to talk, to eat. And many, many, many years later, I understood what was the feeling I was having, what was happening, and the teaching I was actually receiving. But I didn't get it there. It took many years to integrate everything. And the teaching was that deep understanding, the clarity that home was not a place, but a state of being. And I had to have the last, and we can talk about that afterwards if you want, but the other near-death experience to finally get it. That this knowing that home is here and now. But at that moment, I started to feel the sense that I could talk to my sisters, play, but I was still throwing big tantrums because I did not feel any attachment to any form. I didn't feel attachment to my name, to my persona, to my family. And when they call me Ingrid, I would just get very aggravated. Say, that's not my name. And then I never really, up to that point, heard the beings of light talking until I threw a big tantrum. They were calling me to eat, and I'm like, don't call me Ingrid. So the lady came, Ingrid, we're calling you. Come and have dinner. And I'm like, don't call me like that. That's not my name. And she said, then what is your name? And I said, I don't need one. Then they sent me to bed. I went to bed. I was crying, all angry. And it's when I heard a voice, like very sweet, very calming, loving. I said, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light, as you already know. So it was that, like, of course, and it is the deeper understanding that labels are not needed in the realm of the light. And then after it, that's why for me, Mary, when people mention angels or masters or guides, people have the sense that they need a name. And I understand, because that's our human experience. And in our human experience, names are beautiful, they carry energy, they're important. But in the realm of the light, they are not needed. And then that's why I never needed to give a name to any being, because I already felt that sense of not needing to identify anything by any label. And when I was many times in having the experience of being surrounded by hundreds of beings of light, sometimes thousands, they would talk to me and I didn't need to know names or nothing. And I would know who was talking, despite that I could not see any shape. So it's incredible. It's just all depends. It's all about perception. It's all about perception. So there was some other things they told me the first time I met them. One, that it was important that I didn't share with anyone because they were not going to understand. And for me, it was like, but what is not to understand? I don't get it. But yeah, very quick, I realized, yeah, they don't understand. And the other thing was that there was going to be people in my path to guide me and to help me. And that someday I was going to share all these, but I will have to wait, and they show me very late in the future.
One thing I find interesting, Ingrid, about your story, if it's okay, it's so beautiful, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
But so I think I can say for myself, and I'm going to assume there's other people that feel this way. We all think, wow, so you've been seeing angels and guides since you were 2. So your life must have been perfect. You must have made no mistakes, no errors, because you've got this direct line to the other side. And that's not the case. And I'm rereading your book for the second time. And it's dawning on me, because I also have had a very non-traditional life, and a lot of trauma, and very little too. I remember I never had a near death. I always wanted one. Every time if I would have surgery or something, I'd go, please let me just come back just for a minute, just because I always knew it, in my bones. There was never a question for me. But so we think if we had this perfect guidance, we would just live these perfect lives and never make mistakes. But what I find, and I believe, is we are not prevented from making choices, especially if those choices will result in some really powerful lessons. And also, this is my opinion. I don't know if this is what you've come to believe, but it stokes such compassion in us. And if we want to truly see what the truth is and how connected we are, we really need to have our compassion fostered. And the way it gets fostered is by struggling. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say that because I would listen to people like you when I was younger. I've been watching and reading near-death experiences since I was a teenager. To me, it felt like home videos and home, like I wanted to hear all about it. And I always thought, oh, if only I could have that experience, I wouldn't make any mistakes, and then I would lead the perfect life. But that's not what happened to you, is it?
No. And at the end of the day, what is the perfect life? It all depends on our perception and the things we need for our growing and our evolution, like you were mentioning. Because at the end of the day, is like we're here because there's things we need to correct, there's things we need to learn, and there's the things that we also come to offer to each other. So in reality, you also mentioned it, we have free will. And I was a very rebellious person. And that being rebellious brought me to have to experience things that were hard. And also all of us have our individuality that we come to experience. And you could have the perfect parents, to call it like that, and still we leave home. And I wrote it in the book how at the age of 19, I told the being so like, okay, I need to live my own stuff, live my own life. I have leave me, let me go, let me be, pretty much. And the compassion of the universe said, yes, of course. Like you also mentioned, there was a point where I could say that I have become somehow arrogant, because I would look at others and say, don't you realize how easy, why don't you get it? Why don't you get it? Until I got tangled, lost the way, my focus of attention got lost, and I went through many sufferings too. And realized how easy it was to lose the way, how easy it was to get disconnected, how easy it was to get distracted, and then fall into the things that we need to experience. But like you also mentioned very wisely, only through contrast we learn to truly appreciate. I said to people, how could you appreciate health if you never have been sick? How could you appreciate joy if you never have been sad? You couldn't even know the difference. And how could you be more compassionate, more empathic, more loving, more the sense of wanting to serve, if the struggle didn't bring you to see it?
Very true. Now, you mentioned you had another near-death experience last year. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, and this near-death experience happened during a surgery. And there's a bunch of stuff that happened before that, but there was a moment, few days before, I had an experience in which I was extremely nervous, very overwhelmed, and the sense of worry. And in the middle of the night, I woke up, and the moment I heard the voice of the divine, the voice of God, it says to me, do you trust me? And the moment I say yes, I was at peace. It was, all the worry was gone. The next day, I had that sense of like, God is everything. God is everywhere. So I am experiencing this deep state of oneness for days. And as the day passed, the story is long, Mary, so I'm not telling it all, but I was in a car accident, and as a result of all this accident and everything, I ended up having to have a surgery I've been postponing, but the car accident made that now I had to make the decision to have this surgery. And right before the surgery, I told the doctor, you have to monitor my blood pressure. I knew something was going to happen, and I said, you have to. Then I was so in it that she called the anesthesiologist. I said, I'm very sensitive to anesthesia, and it happens a lot to people that have had near-death experiences. And he listened to me. They were actually very closely looking at my blood pressure. And during the surgery, that was supposedly just like not just supposedly an easy procedure. My blood pressure dropped, and I entered into hypothermia. When all this is happening to my body, I enter in that realm of the light again. And it's when I heard for the first time, like I mentioned to you, I have had 2 other experiences previous to that one, 2 near deaths before. And in the 2 of them, I was sent back. I was not even asked. It was, you're back. This was the first time, Mary, I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I heard if I wanted to stay, it was, again, that sense of home, and the sense of like, of course I want to stay. This is the paradise. This is heaven. And the moment I heard, oh, you want to go back. And I said, wait a minute. Is this a test? And then I like to explain that it wasn't the sense that no one was testing me. It was the sense of we are part of all the decisions that we make. It's like, oh, I'm testing myself. I said, am I being tested? I'm testing myself. And then I said, because if God is everything, and if God is everywhere, and absolutely everything is a manifestation of God, then where is here and where is there? Then I said, whoa, in reality, there is no here and there is not there. So I just said the only thing I could think at that moment was keep me where I can serve God the most. And at that moment, I felt the sense, look, up to that point, I was in the state of no judgment, the state of knowing that absolutely everything was all right. So if I die or I live, as we call it, I felt it irrelevant. It was everything is all right. The question is where I can serve the most. And then when I said those words, I started to feel the pull of, oh, my son, my husband, my family, I needed to anchor. And so the emotional attachment happened. And then I was pulled back here. And that's when I just had that teaching I had received since I was a child about home was completely clear. Of course, home is not a place, it's a state of being. The kingdom of heaven is here and now in each one of us. And now the word was living my life to the fullest, because I always wanted in a way to leave, to go back. Can I just go? And now I'm like, no, this is my opportunity to really grow, to really discover the things I have not discovered and correct within me, to help who I can help, to be at service. And I said, this is not about near-death experiences, it's about near life experience. How can I truly learn to live?
That is so beautiful, Ingrid. Just want to take that in. I see the relevance of that in the world today. There's so much happening. Obviously, we talk about this a lot on the show, that there's definitely a shift in mass consciousness. And what I see, and this is my opinion, which I'm never shy about sharing, but my opinion is, I really believe, and I understand this because I used to be very, very religious. There is a faction of humanity that has been waiting for, I don't know if revenge is the right word, but, for that God to come and do right by them and, make all these people that have been making them suffer pay. This God of might and strength, and fear that God because he's going to send a flood or, locusts or whatever. This God, don't get him mad. And in my experience, since leaving traditional religion and seeking on my own, that's not God at all. That is dogma we were taught to keep us manageable, controllable, fearful, and under someone else's thumb because they had a personal agenda. What I think probably this is why I've always loved near-death experiences. And honestly, it almost makes me weep listening to you, because that is such the truth of what I've experienced. And, most of humanity is very afraid of dying. I've not had a near-death experience, but I've never been afraid of dying, because I want to say I remember so much. I just know in my heart what it's like over there. And it's not judgment. And people say we don't know. We do know. There are millions of people who've had near-death experiences, that share with us there was no judgment. It was pure love. We're all one. What we do to another, we're doing to ourselves, to all of humanity. It all affects like a ripple in the ocean. So there are a lot of examples. And I do feel what's going on today is there is a faction of humanity that is ready to make this move forward in a more peaceful, happy, kind, loving, truer world. But there's a faction that is still waiting for their due. They want that God to come and take care of their enemies and remain kind of childlike, to be honest. And I mean, that's what we say, God the Father, we're the children. And that's a very, very good way to brainwash us into believing that we are powerless. Now, you have been very connected for a long time. So I guess what I want to ask is, of course, especially in the Catholic Church, we're taught saints. They're very special, they're very rare, and only they get to have these wonderful experiences. So I'm trusting that you've not found that to be true, but yet you have them. So I guess my question would be, we would all, I'm sure, love to see beings and angels and lights and have the kind of guidance, because you've had, the book is amazing. A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom, which is, it's a perfect title because that's really where all the answers are, inside of us. So I don't know if it's possible, but do you believe, or have the guides told you, do we all have this? And we're just not seeing them? And if that's so, how can us regular folks see and be more connected to light beings, guides, and angels?
I love this question, Mary, because yes, we all do. There's not the chosen ones. I think we chose ourselves. How? By learning to quiet the mind. All of us can do it, but imagine that we're like a radio. But due to conditioning, due to beliefs, we set our dial in certain part. And now the dial is set there, and that's what all that is receiving, because everything is right here. We cannot see it, but absolutely every wave of TV, internet, radio, everything is here and now. What happened is, where are we? Where is our connection? Where is our antenna? So I said, it all depends where you have your dial and your antenna. And if we are beings that are conditioned to hear or see or perceive certain way, then we're limited, and we limit ourselves to that conditioning. We have to go outside the box. Like the experience I had when I was just little, it happened, but we can get there through learning to quiet and calm the mind. That's why these techniques have been trying to, all the gurus, teachers, masters, to pass these techniques of meditation, mindfulness, calm the mind, and you'll see what you can do. By calming the mind, we learn to switch, change that dial. I always used to say to people, it's like after my near-death experience, it's like the doors never close. It's like the doors never close. And one day the beings of life, after many years, said to me, Ingrid, of course the doors never close, because there are not doors. We are the ones that, due to conditioning, due to beliefs, due to experiences, fear, we close the door. And now we even put a door, and on top and in front of that a gate, and in front of that another door, and in front of that another gate, until we just completely isolate ourselves. And the work is how little, and I offer many techniques to people of how go back and be whole, how techniques of embodiment, techniques of working with the emotional body, with the mental body, I said to people, and I love this sentence, the beings of life always remind me about this powerful sentence that says, what is in the way is the way. every experience, every moment, every challenge, every emotion is an opportunity to be present, to fuel our awareness, to calm our mind. And the more we learn to calm the mind, the more access we have to inner wisdom, and the more access we have to that inner power. And instead of being reactive, we become responsive. We become response able. That's the wisdom, is when we have access to the wisdom of the heart, the intelligence of the universe. And this is another very, very important thing, Mary. People always ask me how I know that the beings of light you talk with are like good, because people say, oh, what if they're evil? What is this evil thing? How you know? And this is amazing, because from the time I was a little child, and it's written in my book, the beings of light said to me, do not believe anything we say, but have an open mind and go and experience it yourself. That's the big difference between dogma and science. I say spirituality is science. Why? Because you apply the scientific method. Otherwise, it's just another dogma. Otherwise, it's just a belief. So you start by, probably believing something from something, getting an idea. I can go and say, to give an analogy, there's a cloudy sky, and I can come and say, Mary, if you cross those clouds, there's a blue sky. You could choose to just believe me, and it becomes religion. It's dogma. Oh, okay, I believe you. But what if you say, you know what? I'm going to build me an airplane and go look. People think that doubt is wrong. No. It's your capacity to say, okay, let me go check it. Let me experience it myself. I want to see.
That's
And you
so
go,
powerful.
yeah, believe that airplane, build that airplane. You formulate a theory, an hypothesis, and you said, okay, I'm going to go there. You grab your airplane, you experience it yourself, you cross the clouds, and you say, oh, yes, there's a blue sky here. So now what you did, you have a result, you compare, you apply the scientific method, and everything starts with observation. Know thyself. And the more you go and look, the more you look, the more you look. And with the beings of light, they said to me, don't believe what we say, have an open mind, and always guided me to look within. Look within.
That's so powerful, Ingrid. We are so well trained to stay within our little box, as you say. And we can't help it. We're children, so we trust the adults around us. And it's not that they're at fault or to blame, because they're only doing what they were taught to do. And what I'm coming to believe, and it sounds like this is what you're saying as well, is everything is actually here and it's happening, but we have trained ourselves to only see a certain bit. And I was talking about this on one of the earlier shows. Imagine if we were taught that when there's a full moon, we're going to feel more emotions because it's pulling our pain up. The moon is pulling our pain up to heal it, so we can look at it and see it. Maybe we need to cry. Maybe we need to take a plastic bat and scream out whatever this trauma is. But we're actually connected to it. So it's a blessing. It's a kindness. And I was talking to my kids about this, because I said, you know, this was like a month ago. The full moon is this day. So if you start feeling all these emotions come up, just say, okay, there's something that needs to be healed. It's ready to be healed. What is it? Do I need to cry? Do I need whatever? Imagine if we were taught that instead. People do say, oh, it's a full moon, especially people who work in bars. Oh, it's going to be crazy. People are going to be fighting, because we're not taught about this connection and what this is. Instead, someone's sitting in a bar and all these feelings are coming up, but they've never been taught what it is. So instead, someone looks at them wrong, and they're, instead of saying, oh, this is about my stepfather abusing me when I was a child, I need to heal this. They say, that guy's a jerk, he's looking at me, or he was looking at my girl, and they fight because we've never been taught how connected we are, how to process these kind of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I think it's so powerful what you said, that if we could just retrain ourselves, open our minds, and say, you know, maybe everything I've been trained to believe is not the truth. Maybe there's more to it.
Mm-hmm. And we have been we have been trained to run away and to be reactive, to ignore our emotions. The emotions are doors to awareness. If an emotion is there, we have to pay attention with awareness. People say, but if I pay attention, it takes over. And I said, no, when you pay attention, you become the witness. You create a space. The moment you invite awareness, look, ego is the unattended mind. The moment you are aware, there's no ego. You're now the presence itself. Who is observing? Who is wanting to know? Who is there? So the moment you realize, anger, wow, you become the observer of it. You create distance. You create a space. You are in the state of presence and awareness. And then is the other sentence I use, I love it, and I use all the time. I say, can I be with this? That's the moment you stop resisting. Can I be with this? And I say, as a matter of fact, always been there. So why do I resist it? More space. That's what is called surrender. You open the space to it. And now is when I bring people to apply embodiment techniques that I have learned also from other teachers, and is, where does it feel? Because usually every time that there's trauma, we disembody. And like you said, now it's this whole state of resisting and fighting. And the moment we're like, where does it feel? Oh gosh, we're in the chest. Then now we're acknowledging the presence of those energies in the body. When we don't is when then later we have problems with digestive system or the heart or the lungs or the kidneys, because those energies don't have anywhere to go. And then, and energy, I'm talking at all levels of being. I'm talking about also the chemistry of the body. The more cortisol and hormones of stress I'm having, these, let's call it physiology, biology, the chemistry of a body that is inflamed, full of cortisol, full of adrenaline. Then with that inflammation, the system now cannot process the food well, cannot have a good digestive system, there's no harmony in the system. And when there's no harmony, there's emotions that are attached to that, and there's thoughts that are attached to that. So it's a cycle of pain. So I always say to people, look, this incredible equation, pain, which guess what? Pain in reality is a gift. Because imagine that you have an appendicitis and there's no pain. You die. You don't feel anything. The body is a way of the body saying you're doing or something is happening, you need to pay attention. But it's very different when we say pay plus ignoring it, rejecting it, or reacting equals suffering. So pain you cannot avoid, is part of the human existence, but suffering you can avoid. Suffering you can change. Suffering by what? By paying attention, by creating a space, by understanding it. Even I have even worked with people that are like in a lot of physical pain, and the moment that we definitely learn, there's many techniques to learn to work and surrender and understanding, and even working with the emotional body to the point where the pain is corrected or almost gone. So it's incredible what happened when we invite awareness, presence, into our life. I say use everything to fuel your awareness. What is in the way is the way.
Wow, I love that. What is in the way is the way. You said a couple of things that I think are very powerful. One is you said it's in there anyway. We all have those pains, those memories, whatever it is that come up, and we want to shove it down. But the only way to stop being a victim to our feelings is to look at it, feel it, let it heal so it can be released and healed. I love that. There's something you said in the book that you also said here that I think is especially pertinent for women, because we are such people pleasers. We're trained to be such nice, good little girls and not make waves and not cause too many problems and those kind of things. But you spoke about how when you told the beings to go away for it, because you wanted to be normal. You wanted to be normal. And you said, I didn't really want to be normal. You realized you wanted to be loved. And I think that's so true. Could be true for men. I'm not a man in this life, so I don't know. But I know especially for women, this is a really big logjam for us, is people pleasing and wanting everyone to like us. And I think it's because we abandon ourselves so much. And the key to stopping all that people pleasing is, I always say this, my thing is when that stuff comes up, for some reason, putting my hands over my heart, just left and then right over it, the giving and receiving hand, and just for a minute, and just saying, it's okay, it's okay. That starts kind of building a trust with that person inside that we've abandoned, a little girl, teenager, young woman, whoever she is, that we abandoned because she wasn't conforming to type, so she was getting rejected. And when we can foster that love and acceptance within ourselves, I think we don't need it so much outside of us, so we won't abandon ourselves so much. But that's such a powerful sentence in itself. I didn't want to be normal. I wanted to be loved. It's so beautiful, Ingrid. It's one of my favorite sentences that I'll carry with me, because it's like, oh, that's such wisdom, such wisdom.
Oh gosh, yes. And part of this embodiment technique, I am so glad you mentioned it, because it's learning to nurture ourselves. People also think that touch, they don't realize the importance of touch. And sometimes we think that, say that you're scared, like, oh, you do this with your hands, or like, oh my gosh. We think that we do that just because we do that. No, is the wisdom of the body and the nervous system is such that there's mechanisms like touching that is a way to self-regulate the nervous system. If you never touch a baby, the baby dies. Same thing with us. If we never offer that touch to ourselves, we fall into that feeling of I don't belong. I am not loved. You feel like I am this ghost, and depression comes and sadness comes. But the moment that with all these techniques, we practice this, and if it feels here, you put your hands there. You offer that presence and that nourishment to yourself. I care. If it's in the belly, if it's in the throat, if it's, I am, oh. That's why when it hurts, we touch it. What we're doing when we even like do this of putting pressure is self-regulating the nervous system. So it's very important, incredibly, as you mentioned, is like love is like, if we think about every spiritual teaching, religion, philosophy, there's the two main commandments: love God over all things, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. But how can you even do any of that if we don't know love? How can I even, it's the part where like even inside of us, we already feel lost, because how can ever do anything to meet those commitments if I don't know how to love? And the way to start is by offering that presence to yourself. Like when an emotion comes, sadness, where does it feel? Can I be with this? And at that moment, you offer your presence. And I said to people, if you don't have the capacity to offer that love, that presence, that I hear you. I said, even to this part, if this part could talk, what would it say? Please listen to me, stay, don't go. Or I want to belong, I want to be loved. And imagine that you're at that moment, you say, I am staying, I hear you, I see you, I'm not leaving. And I say, people, and if you don't have the capacity to offer that to yourself, think about an angel, think about a pet, think about nature, think about God, think about Jesus or whoever, the master or teacher or guru, and anything that make you feel safe and embrace and love, and bring it. And like you say, Mary, we start creating that energy of presence from within. And the more you do it, you realize, wow, I don't need it from out there. I don't need to be validated. I don't need to be recognized, or I don't need to have the sense that I have to belong. I belong because I exist. I belong because I am.
I think one of the most powerful things any woman can do, and I'm always on the side of women unapologetically. I'm on their side. Many spiritual religious teachings say, if you want to heal or you want to feel better or love, serve others. And I don't think that's a good teaching for women, because if serving others was a way to personal love, women would be madly in love with themselves, because we spend most of our lives just serving others, because that's what we're trained to do. So I really do think for women to begin, where do you begin? And we'll be wrapping up in just a minute, and I do want to ask your opinion on how exactly to begin this. But I would say for any woman, the way to begin to heal this and truly change your life is going within and taking whatever steps you can take for yourself.
Yeah.
Service yourself, love yourself, be as kind and forgiving to yourself as you are to everyone around you. Yeah. And I'm sure, Ingrid, you probably have maybe a couple practical solutions. Say I'm a woman listening to this and I'm like, I have no clue. I don't even know how to begin loving myself. I don't know how to begin connecting. So what would you tell me?
I would say, learn to be present with yourself. Again, once we start working with our own emotions, how do I feel? I'm sad. Can I be with this? Where does it feel? I'm present, I'm here, and I'm not leaving. You start offering that present to yourself. And you know, the Beings of Light gave me this amazing teaching, and service is something that is not also what we were taught. Serving is not lowering our head and letting others be a doormat, or no. The true giver is the person that is present. They said to me, there's three kinds of giver. The giver that is giving for the sake of himself, always giving, expecting something in return. Even if that thing in return is a thank you, or so we're always expecting to get something. And when we're expecting all the time to get something, it's because we're still at the state of needing the world to recognize, or needing the world to give us what we have not been able to see within ourselves. The more you start becoming present. And I said, how can you be present? There's very simple exercises we can start doing. I said to people, what do you do when you're heating the water for your coffee or your tea? They said, nothing. And I said, what about one conscious breath? One conscious breath. And in that conscious breath, give yourself that sense of spaciousness. I love to give the example. Imagine that you're carrying a very heavy backpack full of rocks and put more and more and more rocks. How does it feel? Walk 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. You can even do it in your head now. You're already like, whoa, that's heavy. Take it off. How does it feel? Even doing a simple sound as a sigh. Another way how the nervous system self-regulate itself. You're giving those moments of presence. And you're doing it with having an intention. You're having the intention of being present. With that intention, you have to have awareness. So you're inviting awareness into your life. The more and more and more you do little exercises like that, that's how you start paving the way. Paving the way. And then from there, I teach techniques of gratitude. Before drinking your coffee, smell it. It's so good. You feel gratitude for the things that make you feel great. And what are the things that make you feel great? The things you love. So gratitude and love are synonyms. Reason why gratitude is the highest vibrational frequency there is. So start with those moments, give it to yourself. The kids are out in the school or you're in the office and say, what do you do when you walk from your office to the bathroom? Be present. One step in present. Unconscious breath. Give it like a candy. You have to start little by little because it's so many years of conditioning that doesn't fall away like that in one moment, little by little. With this, you start like opening the Pandora box, the closet. I said, empty the closet, but you're not going to open the closet. I'm like, whoa, get overwhelmed. It's one thing at a time. You start opening the space, learning to work with the emotions little by little, gentle with yourself. And Mary, there's many amazing techniques, but in general, the most important thing is to learn to calm the mind. That's the most incredible gift you can give to yourself. Because from those moments of spaciousness, walk in meditation, walk in presence, do your dishes in present. Have an apple, a fruit, and before eating it, smell it. Do what you do. Every time you do, you create a space. There was one day, a being of light, I had this vision. I've been having these visions all my life too, where it's incredible when I received these teachings. And I saw a lake, and the lake was completely quiet, peaceful. And the being of light holding a rock. And it's like this kind of nutty look, like I'm going to drop this rock in the water. And I'm like, it was so peaceful, Mary. I'm like, don't disturb the peace. And then he looked at me and he dropped the rock. What is my expectation? Of course, a rock that hits the water is going to disturb it, create ripples. The moment that the rock touched the water, it went through. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? And then it's when the being of light said to me, no matter the size of the rock, just like the water, it can feel it, but let it go through. Someday you have to be like that water, they said. Where yeah, you know there's something there, an emotion is there, but you learn to let it pass. Be the master of your emotions.
Ingrid,
Say
thank you
why-
so much.
I
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you want to say something more?
Yeah, just one last thing. They say, why do you think that the beings of light are made of 70% of water? They say, learn to keep your inner water calm.
Oh, I love that. Learn to keep your inner water. That's beautiful. I'm loving this. I hope you can come back another time because I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. There's so much to unpack here, but if people want to learn more about you and your work, Ingrid, where can they go? How can they get in touch with you?
Yes, I have my website, and there I offer one-on-ones. I also do mentorings. I do retreats. I am about to do a retreat next year, couple of retreats next year in Europe. One in near to Barcelona, Spain, and one in Prague, and possibly give a talk in London. So I'm planning a trip where I will do different things in Europe. I also, do the talks, and I have a YouTube channel too.
And what is your website?
My website is ingridhonkala.com.
Honkala. Honkala. I
Yes.
should have asked you that before I had you on. I wanted to make sure I pronounced your name right. Ingrid Honkala is her name. A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom is her book. I highly recommend it. Ingrid, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing all this wisdom and beauty. I was at a retreat with you this past summer, and your presence is so calming, and your words are so soothing and inspiring, and that's definitely what the world needs more of today. So I thank you, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.